I still hear the sound of the screwdriver scraping my lock, my son's voice whispering, "Hurry before she comes back." Let me tell you how I ended up standing at my own door, watching my son become a stranger. My name is Evelyn Morris. I'm 68 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a school principal. I spent 43 years watching over other people's children, protecting them, guiding them, believing that love and discipline could shape any young soul into something good. I believed that with my whole heart. I had to believe it because I was raising my own son with those same principles. For 45 years, I lived in the house that Harold and I built with our own hands. Every brick, every floorboard, every carefully chosen paint color held our memories. Harold passed 8 months ago, and I swear to you, some nights I can still smell his aftershave on his pillow. Some mornings I still make 2 cups of coffee before I remember he's gone. That house isn't just where I live, it's where Harold lives too, in every creaking step, every photograph on every wall. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming and the sympathy cards stopped arriving, I found myself rattling around in rooms that felt too big and too quiet. Daniel, my son, would visit with his wife Kara. They'd sit at my kitchen table and ask how I was managing. They'd hug me goodbye and tell me to call if I needed anything. Anything at all, they said. I thought that meant I wasn't alone. I thought that meant family was still family, even after death tried to tear it apart. But there was something in their eyes during those visits. Something that made my skin crawl, though I couldn't name it then. The way Kara would look around the house, cataloging, calculating. The way Daniel would ask about my travel plans, about whether I was thinking of downsizing, about whether I really needed all of Harold's things. I told myself it was concern. I told myself they were grieving too, that they were trying to help me face reality. I was supposed to fly to Phoenix to visit my sister Margaret. She'd been begging me to come, saying the change of scenery would do me good. Part of me didn't want to leave the house. Leaving felt like abandoning Harold somehow. But Margaret persisted, and Daniel encouraged it too. He said it would be healthy for me to get away, to clear my head. So I packed my bag, kissed Harold's photograph goodnight, and headed to the airport. When the announcement came, flight canceled due to mechanical issues, something in me whispered, "Go home." It wasn't logic. It was that strange chill in my spine that told me something was wrong. You know that feeling, don't you? When your mother's intuition starts screaming at you, even when everything looks normal on the surface. I'd felt it before, when Daniel was 15 and claimed he was studying at the library, but came home smelling like cigarettes. I'd felt it when he was 25 and brought home that girl who smiled too much and asked too many questions about our family finances. I felt it sitting in that airport terminal, holding my crumpled boarding pass, watching other passengers complain about the delay. Something was pulling me home with an urgency I couldn't explain. So I called a cab, telling the driver to take me back to Maple Street, back to the house that Harold built, back to the place where I thought I was safe. As the taxi turned onto my street, I saw the moving truck first. At first I thought a neighbor was moving. Mrs. Hartwell had been talking about selling, maybe downsizing to a condo. But when I saw my antique mirror, the one Harold gave me for our 20th anniversary, being loaded onto that truck, my blood turned to ice water in my veins. I paid the driver with shaking hands and walked up my own driveway like I was approaching a crime scene. Because that's exactly what it was. Daniel and Kara were at my front door, tools scattered around them, my belongings stacked in boxes on my own porch. My son had a screwdriver in his hand, working at my lock like a common criminal. Kara was directing him, telling him to hurry, glancing up and down the street like they were afraid of being caught. They were afraid of being caught robbing their own mother. "Daniel," I said, and the sound of my voice cut through the evening air like a blade. "What are you doing?" The screwdriver clattered to the ground. Kara stepped back, her eyes wide with the look of someone who'd been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, except this wasn't innocent childhood mischief. This was my life being loaded into a truck by the people who were supposed to love me most. The silence stretched between us, filled only with the sound of wind through the maple trees Harold planted when Daniel was born. The same trees that had watched my son take his first steps, learn to ride a bike, graduate high school. Now they were witnessing him break into his mother's house like a stranger. "Mom," Daniel finally stammered, his face flushed red with shame and panic. "You're supposed to be in Phoenix. Your flight." "My flight was canceled," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "But that doesn't answer my question. What are you doing at my house with a moving truck at 8 o'clock at night?" Kara stepped forward then, that same calculating smile I'd learned to distrust. "We were helping you declutter, Evelyn. You've been so overwhelmed since Harold passed, and we thought." "You thought what?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was past caring about politeness. "You thought you'd break into my house and steal my belongings while I was out of town? You thought you'd rob me while I was supposed to be grieving in Arizona." "It's not stealing," Kara said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she used when she wanted to make me feel old and confused. "You live alone in this big house you don't even need. Half these things are just sitting here collecting dust. You'll understand one day. You'll understand one day." As if I was some senile old woman who couldn't manage her own life, her own belongings, her own grief. As if 45 years of memories were just clutter to be cleared away at their convenience. I looked at the boxes then, really looked at them. They were labeled in Kara's handwriting: antiques, kitchenware, collectibles. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. This was premeditated theft of everything Harold and I had built together. "Daniel," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay strong. "Look at me." He couldn't. He stared at his feet like he was 12 years old again, caught in a lie about broken windows or missing homework. But this wasn't a childhood mistake. This was my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised to know right from wrong, standing in my driveway with a truck full of my life. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Daniel's shoulders sagged, and I knew. This wasn't the first time. "We've only taken small things," he whispered. "Things we thought you wouldn't miss." Small things. My mother's brooch. Harold's watch. The silver candlesticks we got for our wedding. Small things that held 40 years of love and memory. Small things that were apparently worth more to them sold than they were to me kept. "You've been robbing me," I said, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that cut through my chest like a knife. "While I've been mourning your father, while I've been trying to figure out how to live without him, you've been coming into this house and stealing pieces of our life together." "Mom, please," Daniel said, finally looking up at me with tears in his eyes. "We needed the money. I lost my job 3 months ago, and the bills were piling up," and Kara said. "Don't you dare blame your wife for this," I snapped. "You're a grown man, Daniel. You made the choice to steal from your mother instead of asking for help. You made the choice to break into my house instead of calling me and telling me you were struggling." But even as I said it, I wondered if he would have called. Had I become so wrapped up in my own grief that I'd missed the signs? Had I been so focused on missing Harold that I'd forgotten my son might need me too? No, I couldn't let myself make excuses for this. There is no excuse for what they did. "You could have asked me for help," I continued, my voice rising with each word. "You could have told me you were in trouble. You could have been honest with me instead of waiting for me to leave town so you could rob me blind. Instead, you decided to steal from the woman who gave you life, who raised you, who would have given you anything if you'd just asked." "We knew you wouldn't understand," Kara said, crossing her arms defensively. "You're stubborn about this house, about keeping Harold's things. You're holding on to the past instead of facing reality." "Reality?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Reality is that you're standing in my driveway at night with a truck full of my belongings, trying to justify theft as decluttering. Reality is that my son has become someone I don't recognize." I looked at Daniel then, really looked at him. When had his eyes become so hollow? When had desperation replaced the warmth I used to see there? When had my little boy, who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers, decided that his mother was worth less than whatever money my things might bring. "You sold my life to pay your rent," I whispered, and the words came out so quietly I wasn't sure they'd heard me. But they had. Daniel flinched like I'd slapped him, and Kara's jaw tightened with anger. Good. Let her be angry. Let them both feel some fraction of the betrayal that was tearing through my chest like shrapnel. The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. Mrs. Langford's porch light came on across the street. She must have heard the raised voices. Mr. Peterson slowed his evening walk to glance our way. The neighborhood was watching, and part of me was glad. Let them see what my son had become. Let them witness this moment so I'd know I wasn't losing my mind, wasn't imagining the depth of this betrayal. I pulled out my phone with hands that were surprisingly steady. "Mrs. Langford," I called across the street. "Could you come over here, please? I need a witness for something." "Mom, don't," Daniel pleaded. "Please don't make this public. We can work this out. Can we?" I asked, opening my phone's camera app because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been working this out behind my back for months. I started recording, holding the phone steady as I spoke. "This is Evelyn Morris at my home on Maple Street. It's 8:15 p.m. on October 15th, and I've just discovered my son Daniel Morris and his wife Kara Morris attempting to steal my belongings from my home while I was supposed to be out of town. Everything you say from this moment forward will be recorded and heard by someone other than me." Kara panicked then, grabbing Daniel's arm. "We need to leave. Now." "No," I said, my voice carrying the authority I'd used for 4 decades in school hallways and parent conferences. "You need to return every single item you've taken from this house. You need to unload that truck and put everything back where you found it. And then we're going to have a conversation about what happens next." "You can't force us to," Kara started. "I can call the police," I interrupted. "I can press charges for breaking and entering, for theft, for whatever else my lawyer tells me applies to this situation. Or you can return my belongings and we can handle this as a family. Your choice." Mrs. Langford had crossed the street by then, her face pale with shock as she took in the scene. She was one of the few neighbors who really knew Harold and me, who'd watched Daniel grow up. Seeing her expression, the mixture of disbelief and sympathy, made this somehow more real and more painful. "Oh, Evelyn," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize for me," I told her, keeping my eyes on my son. "I'm not the one who should be ashamed right now." Daniel looked around the street, at the neighbors who were starting to gather, at the phone in my hand still recording, at the truck full of evidence of his betrayal. His shoulders slumped in defeat, and for a moment I saw the little boy again. The one who used to cry when he accidentally stepped on ants, who brought me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day, who used to tell me I was the best mom in the world. "Okay," he said quietly. "We'll put everything back." The next hour was surreal. I stood on my own porch, watching my son and daughter-in-law carry my belongings back into my house under the streetlights and the curious gazes of neighbors. Kara muttered under her breath about being humiliated, about how I was overreacting, about how this would ruin their relationship. Daniel said nothing, just carried boxes and furniture with the mechanical movements of someone who'd had his soul crushed. I felt no satisfaction watching them work. No sense of victory or justice. Just a deep, aching sadness that it had come to this. That my relationship with my only child had been reduced to threats and ultimatums and recorded confessions. Mrs. Langford stayed with me the entire time, her presence a comfort I didn't know I needed. When a box slipped from Kara's hands and family photos scattered across the driveway, she helped gather them up while Kara stood there looking annoyed rather than apologetic. "Don't you dare apologize for demanding respect in your own home," Mrs. Langford murmured to me as we collected pictures of Harold and me on our wedding day, on vacations, at Daniel's graduation. Some lines should never be crossed. By the time the truck was empty and my belongings were back inside, it was nearly 10 o'clock. The street had returned to its usual quiet, but I could feel eyes watching from behind curtains. Tomorrow there would be whispered conversations over coffee and concerned phone calls. The Morris family drama would become neighborhood gossip, and somehow that felt like another violation. Daniel stood in my driveway, hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. Kara had gotten into their car and was waiting with the engine running, her impatience radiating through the windshield. "Mom," Daniel said finally. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know." "Sorry doesn't bring back the months of trust you destroyed," I said. "Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you've been stealing from me while I was grieving your father. Sorry doesn't explain how you thought this was acceptable." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know it's not enough." "No," I agreed. "It's not." Kara honked the horn then, and Daniel winced. "I have to go," he said. "But this isn't over. I'll make this right somehow." I watched them drive away, their taillights disappearing around the corner like the last vestiges of the relationship I thought we had. Mrs. Langford helped me lock up the house, really lock it up, with the chain lock and the deadbolt Harold had installed years ago when there had been break-ins in the neighborhood. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now using those locks to keep out my own son. After Mrs. Langford went home, I sat in my living room surrounded by the belongings that had been returned to me. Everything was back where it belonged, but nothing felt the same. The antique mirror that Harold had given me looked different somehow, tainted by the knowledge that it had been loaded onto a truck to be sold. The family photos seemed to mock me with their images of happier times when I believed in the goodness of my child. Everything was back except peace. Everything was back except the trust that had been shattered along with my heart. I found myself thinking about all the other mothers I'd known over the years. The ones who'd come to parent conferences with bruises they wouldn't explain, staying with husbands who hurt them because leaving felt impossible. The ones who'd stood by children who'd stolen, who'd lied, who'd broken their hearts in a dozen different ways. I'd always wondered how they did it, how they found the strength to keep loving someone who caused them such pain. Now I knew. You don't find the strength. The love just exists, stubborn and relentless, even when everything else has been destroyed. Even when your child has looked you in the eye and chosen to hurt you anyway. When your child betrays you, it's not just the theft of things, it's the theft of love you thought was unbreakable. It's the realization that the person you'd die for would steal from you while you slept. It's the knowledge that your child sees you not as a mother, but as an obstacle to whatever they want more than your love. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump, every creak of the house made me wonder if they'd come back. I kept checking the locks, kept looking out the windows, kept replaying the scene in my driveway until it felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Mr. Harper had handled Harold's estate, had walked me through the grief fog of wills and probate and insurance claims. He was patient and kind, the sort of man who understood that legal problems were usually human problems wearing different clothes. "I need to see you," I told him. "It's about my son." The words felt strange in my mouth. For months after Harold died, every conversation had been about Harold, his affairs, his wishes, his legacy. Now I was calling about Daniel, but for all the wrong reasons. Mr. Harper fit me in that afternoon. His office smelled like old books and leather chairs, the kind of place where serious conversations happened and difficult decisions were made. I told him everything, from the missed visits to the break-in attempt, from the months of theft to the confrontation in my driveway. He listened without interrupting, taking notes in his careful handwriting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I need to tell you something you're not going to like hearing." My stomach dropped. "What?" "When you had your surgery 2 years ago, you gave Daniel power of attorney. It was temporary, just to handle your affairs while you recovered, but legally it was never revoked." The words hit me like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means that technically, he has legal authority to access your property. If he claims he was acting in your best interest, removing items for safekeeping or to help you downsize, it becomes much harder to prove theft. I stared at him, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. "So he can steal from me legally?" "Not exactly," Mr. Harper said. but it complicates things. We need to revoke that power of attorney immediately, and we need to document everything that happened. The fact that he was breaking in at night, that he tried to do this while you were out of town, that he was selling your belongings, all of that works in your favor. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed. Strategic. As if my broken relationship with my son was a chess game to be won or lost. What do you recommend? I asked. Revoke the power of attorney. Document everything. Get him to agree to a formal restitution arrangement. And decide whether you want to press charges. Would you? Press charges, I mean. If it were your son. Mr. Harper was quiet for a long moment. That's not a legal question, Evelyn. That's a mother's question. And only you can answer it. I went home that day with papers to sign and decisions to make. The power of attorney revocation was easy. Just signatures and notarizations. The decision about charges was harder. Part of me wanted Daniel to face consequences for what he'd done. Part of me wanted him to understand the magnitude of his betrayal. But part of me still loved the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he was scared, who used to tell me his secrets and trust me with his dreams. 3 days later, my phone rang. Daniel's number flashed on the screen, and I stared at it for a long moment before answering. Mom? His voice was small, broken. Please. Just let me explain. Explain what? I asked. Explain how you justified robbing your mother? Explain how you planned this for months while I was grieving your father? Explain how you looked me in the eye and lied about checking on me when you were really checking on what you could steal. I lost my job, he said, and I could hear him crying. 3 months ago. The company downsized, and I was one of the first to go. Kara doesn't know. She thinks I've been working this whole time. I've been going to the library every day, pretending to go to work, applying for jobs that don't exist or don't want me. My anger faltered, just for a moment. Daniel, why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I'm 35 years old and I couldn't even keep a job. Because Dad always said a man takes care of his family, and I was failing at the one thing he taught me mattered most. Harold had said that. Many times. A man takes care of his family. It was old-fashioned thinking, the kind that put too much pressure on men to be providers and not enough emphasis on being human beings who sometimes needed help. So you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help? Kara said you'd never understand. She said you'd lecture me about responsibility and make me feel worse than I already did. She said you'd probably want to help, but that it would come with conditions and judgment, and I told you so's. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her because it was easier than facing the truth. Easier than admitting I'd failed. Easier than asking my widowed mother for money when you're dealing with your own problems. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words. How had we gotten to a place where my son felt he couldn't come to me with his problems? How had I become someone he thought would judge rather than help? Kara was wrong, I said quietly. I would have helped you. No conditions, no lectures. I would have helped you because you're my son and I love you. I know that now, he whispered. But knowing it now doesn't change what I did. Doesn't change that I betrayed you when you needed me most. No, I agreed. It doesn't. We sat in silence for a moment, the phone line carrying our shared grief across the miles between us. I'm working now, Daniel said finally. At a warehouse. Night shift. The pay isn't great, but it's honest work. I want to pay you back for everything I took, everything I sold. I want to make this right somehow. Making it right isn't just about money, Daniel. I know. But it's a start, isn't it? Can we start there? I thought about forgiveness then. Real forgiveness, not the easy kind you give for small hurts and minor disappointments, but the hard kind that costs you something. The kind that requires you to choose love over justice, hope over bitterness, grace over the satisfaction of being right. Come to my house tomorrow, I said. Bring Kara. We're going to have a conversation with my lawyer present, and we're going to figure out how to move forward. But Daniel. Yes. This is your one chance. Your only chance. If you break my trust again, if you steal from me again, if you lie to me again, we're done. Do you understand? Yes, he said. I understand. The next day, Daniel and Kara sat in Mr. Harper's office across from me, looking like children called to the principal's office. Which, in a way, they were. I'd spent 43 years in education, and I knew the difference between genuine remorse and performed contrition. Daniel's shame was real. It radiated from him like heat from a fever. Kara's was less convincing. Mr. Harper had prepared a formal restitution agreement. It outlined every item that had been taken, every piece that had been sold, every dollar that needed to be repaid. Daniel signed it with shaking hands, agreeing to monthly payments that would take him 2 years to complete. I need you to understand something, I told them both when the paperwork was finished. This isn't forgiveness. This is mercy. Forgiveness will come later, if it comes at all. But mercy is what I'm offering you now, the chance to make amends without involving the police. Kara shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable with the formal nature of the agreement. This feels like overkill, Evelyn. We're family. Family is exactly why this is necessary, I replied. Because family should be able to trust each other. Family should be honest with each other. Family should ask for help instead of taking it by force. Kara, Daniel said quietly. Please don't make this harder than it already is. She fell silent, but I could see the resentment in her eyes. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. She thought I was overreacting, being dramatic, being cruel. She would probably always think that. But Daniel was different. I could see it in the way he looked at me, the way he signed his name to that agreement like he was signing a confession. He understood what he'd lost. He understood what it would take to get it back. I want to work for you too, he said as we prepared to leave. I want to help you with the house, with maintenance, with whatever you need. Not just to pay off what I owe, but because I want to be useful to you instead of just taking from you. We'll see, I said. One day at a time. And that's how it started. Every Saturday, Daniel would come to the house. At first, Kara came with him, sitting in the car while he worked, making it clear through her body language that she considered this beneath them both. But Daniel would mow the lawn, fix loose boards on the porch, paint the garage door that had been peeling since Harold got sick. We didn't talk much at first. The silence between us was too heavy, too full of things that couldn't be unsaid. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild something that resembled trust. The first time Daniel came alone, without Kara waiting in the car, I made him lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and chips, but it felt like a small miracle. We sat at the kitchen table where he used to do homework, where Harold used to help him with math problems, where we'd celebrated birthdays and discussed report cards and planned family vacations. I miss him too, Daniel said suddenly, apropos of nothing. Your father? Yeah. I know I've been so focused on my own problems that I never really talked to you about missing him. But I do. Every day. Tell me, I said, and meant it. He talked about Harold then, about fishing trips and baseball games, about the way Harold would whistle while he worked in the garage, about the pride in Harold's voice when Daniel graduated college. He talked about feeling lost without his father's guidance, about making decisions Harold would have disapproved of, about becoming someone his father wouldn't recognize. Dad would have been so disappointed in me, Daniel said, his voice breaking. Yes, I agreed, because lying wouldn't help anyone. He would have been. But he also would have forgiven you, just like I'm trying to do. Are you? Trying to forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Every day. Some days I do better than others. What about today? I looked at my son, really looked at him. His hands were dirty from working in my garden. His shirt was damp with sweat from replacing the broken step on my back porch. His eyes were clearer than they'd been in months, free from the desperation and guilt that had shadowed them for so long. Today is a good day, I said. It took 6 months before I could sleep through the night without checking the locks. It took 8 months before I could look at my belongings without remembering them loaded in that truck. It took a full year before I could trust Daniel alone in my house, before I could leave him with my spare key, before I could go visit Margaret in Phoenix without wondering what I'd find when I came home. But trust, I learned, is like a bone that's been broken. It can heal, but it's never quite the same. There's always a weak spot, always a reminder of the damage that was done. Every nail Daniel hammered into my fence, every board he replaced, every hour he spent repairing the physical things he'd tried to take was another step back toward the son I'd lost. Forgiveness isn't for you, Daniel. It's for me, because I refuse to let your betrayal turn me into someone bitter. It's for me because holding on to anger would have poisoned every remaining day I have left on this earth. It's for me because love, real love, mother love, is stronger than betrayal, deeper than disappointment, more persistent than pain. The day Daniel made his final payment, 2 years and 3 months after that horrible night in my driveway, he brought me flowers. Not expensive ones, not the kind you buy to impress someone, but dandelions picked from his own yard. Just like he used to do when he was small. These are weeds, I told him, just like I used to when he was 5 years old. They're flowers to me, he replied, just like he used to then. And for the first time in over 2 years, I laughed. Really laughed, from the bottom of my soul, because my son had remembered what it felt like to bring his mother joy instead of pain. We still have work to do, Daniel and I. Trust takes time, and some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. But every Saturday he comes to help me. Every month he makes his payment without being asked. Every time he looks me in the eye and tells me the truth instead of a convenient lie, we build something new on the foundation of what was broken. I still live in the house that Harold and I built. I still miss him every morning when I make 1 cup of coffee instead of 2. I still see him in every photograph, still smell his aftershave on quiet Sunday afternoons, still hear his voice telling me that a parent's love is the closest thing to unconditional that exists in this world. Harold was right about that. Love doesn't mean accepting betrayal or enabling bad choices or pretending that hurt doesn't matter. Love means standing firm in your boundaries while keeping your heart open to the possibility of redemption. Love means believing that people can change while protecting yourself from further harm. Love means that every nail Daniel hammers is another step back toward the relationship we lost, but also toward something new we're building together. I walk past the new locks on my door every day, and they remind me that trust must be earned, that safety must be protected, that love without boundaries isn't love at all. But I also leave my key with Daniel now when I travel, because redemption is real and change is possible, and sometimes the child who breaks your heart is the same one who learns to heal it. Trust takes time, but so does redemption. And I have learned that a mother's love is patient enough for both.